Hello, my friends. Happy Friday. I'm Kyler Cheatham, your host on the Confluential Live today, joined by Adam Cheatham as always. And this is our Friday conversation where we can really dig in and unpack kind of real things that we're seeing with our client work or within the industry. So if you're new here, welcome. We're excited to have you. If you're from our other lives on Instagram or TikTok, we're happy you made the jump over to YouTube or LinkedIn, which is where we're live on Friday mornings. So we're happy to have you here. Today, we're kind of talking about what does decentralized tools or decentralized architecture really look like and what can be the problems with that in knowing that we have a marketplace that's now full of options, so many tools to choose from. How many is too many? When is it efficient? How do you balance all of those? Which is interesting because Adam and I were just having this conversation this morning. So it's very timely when it comes to kind of what we're seeing with our real client work. So before I let him say good morning, just a few logistics to cover. If you've never been on one of these, they're super interactive. So I definitely invite you to drop your comments wherever you're joining from. We can see them on the side here, and you're able to kind of see them as well when they come in, depending on where you're joining. Ask questions, join the conversation. Really doesn't matter what we say, right? It matters what's best for your business. 100 tools might be right for you, or two, right? It totally depends on what you got going on. So we definitely invite you to engage there, to kind of just test that. Let us know where you're joining from this morning, and we can kind of get started. But happy Friday, Adam. I'm ready this week. It's our first full week of school. And let me tell you, I don't go to school, but I feel it. So,
Well, happy Friday indeed. It's been a good week. We've been quite busy with lots of different things, so I'm happy with all of those things this week. It's this is always an interesting topic when you start talking about what happens when you buy little tools to do big jobs. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. My name's Adam Cheatham. I'm the CEO of Confluential, and when we talk about topics like this, we always take it from a perspective of the business has a job to do, and that's
mhm,
fine. IT has a job to do as well. That's also fine. And sometimes those things come together and they create friction. Sometimes in that friction, little pieces slip out like software packages. It's funny
mhm,
because what we were talking about this morning is um, an organization that uh, is having trouble with people just buying software packages all over the place. And then they decided to get procurement looped into the conversation because procurement's helping with these software buys, and like, well, IT has to support those, so let's connect on that. And now all of a sudden, everybody, you get an idea of all of the things that people are buying,
I urgently need a new.
and it's at first it's like, for real, this is what you want, and then you start looking at the justification and stuff like that, and there's always room for improvement. And
Yeah.
we're going to help with those things, but I think it's an interesting conversation when you think about it overall, because um, it's almost like if you have lots of different people who draw from the same bucket of money, the business's money, right? And they all have different ideas of what they need, but they don't have any idea what anybody else is doing either. So you lose out on that scaling capability as a large organization by not having those conversations at the broader level.
Hmm.
Um, because we've got to make sure that things keep moving, and these people, they want this thing and they need it, and so we just don't ask questions. We just give them what they want, and it's their budget
Hmm.
anyway, right? So it's going to be a fun conversation. I've got a lot of different thoughts on it. It certainly creates a lot of challenges. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's do it. Let's dig in. Let's go. Let's have a day, as Mick would say. Speaking of Mick, welcome, the team in the comments. So joining from Colorado, we're excited to have you on today. And I think it's like nobody just wakes up one day and they're like, I'm going to make our tech stack super fragmented and complicated, right? It happens kind of with one perfectly reasonable decision that really compounds onto others. And I think it's difficult because a lot of times what we're hearing is buy those specialized tools, right? Buy those tools that really make your job easier, especially with things like, AI entering the conversation.
But don't buy the wrong ones.
Yeah, right. And how are we supposed to know that, right? But we don't consider what it means for the rest of the business, because that's not necessarily the goal of the conversation, whether that's a good or a bad thing. It's not how it's framed.
Yeah.
So, and like some examples of that is like, sales buys something because Salesforce is too cumbersome. And all of a sudden, we have like repeat issues, or someone starts buying power apps because IT has a 6-month backlog. And though, I mean, so those are all relatively reasonable reasons to buy that. We just haven't come like full circle, right? We kind of build our own wing of the house and then don't think about how the plumbing runs through the rest of the organization and how that actually works. So at what point, the question for you, and I know you're like, what
I
at
got
what
so many examples right now. This is gonna be fun.
good. At what point does like that departmental autonomy become a critical business problem or a critical architecture problem?
Well, I'd say at the moment that you stop paying attention to it, right? I think that AI applications, I think, are such a great example. Um, how many AI tools are we using?
I have no idea. That's above my pay grade.
I do.
Good. I'm glad somebody here
It
does.
was well, and what's funny is that these types of conversations, they require some follow through, right? Um, we had a conversation a couple of months ago, Kyler and I. Hey, you know what? We've done great things with ChatGPT and Perplexity and Copilot, and there's there are one or two others that we've used.
Claude.
This is when we were adding Claude
Mm.
into the conversation, and I said, but I've really gotten into Claude. I really like the way that it has so many things that it can do, and now we have this large tech stack of AI applications. So we're gonna have to get rid of at least one. And we had a great conversation. All right, well, let's get rid of one, maybe two. Who knows? We might get crazy and get rid of three of them. Um, I think we talked about that for a couple of days, and then we got moving on to other things. We started using Claude, we started using this, and that conversation has gotten lost, right? And then next thing we know, at some point we'll talk about it again, and we'll have the same circular conversation on the. All right, can we get rid of any of this? Well, that serves a purpose. This serves a purpose. That's okay, right? But can we use them for shared purposes, or do we really need one of the same thing that does all of the things? So I think that the that's such a great example of what happens at scale, right? Um, what happens when you have decentralized tool choices is you buy one tool for one problem, and then you use it, and then you realize through using it that at least from your perspective, it can't do this and that. So we're going to buy another software that can do this and that. And then somebody says, you want to spend more money on software? And they go, well, yeah, I need this. I need these. We have these pain points. They need to be solved. All right. Well, I agree. Those pain points must be solved. So we're going to do this. And your framing is we're going to buy this software package because software that we have right now doesn't do that. Okay, where's the business justification on this? So we said, well, we're gonna have these gains. It's like, can I get rid of that software package? And it's well, yeah, sure. We don't need it anymore. And then you implement the new one, you realize that other software package does things too. In your whole analysis, you never considered anything other than what that package doesn't do. And you fill those holes with a new software package that has its own different holes. And now your business case that you bought on, you got to go back on. But we've already implemented both. We're already paying both of them now.
Yeah.
We need them both. Now all we did was double our licensing fees on software packages because we weren't paying attention, right? So I hate to admit it out loud, even as a small consulting firm, we are doing that right now. I am certain that if we did sat down, did an analysis, and got after it, that we would be able to eliminate at least two AI tools that we're using today.
Mm-hmm.
We would be able to do that. We have lots of change management issues with, but I use that for this. But at the end of the day, I bet we wouldn't notice it as much as we think we would when we found
Mm-hmm.
out where new things come from. We've got redundancy, but that's where this conversation builds. That's where that happens at the AI level, but also at the enterprise level. This is how organizations end up with two CRMs, right?
Many. Yeah.
That's now we're not talking about a software subscription for AI for Claude and ChatGPT, which creates its own problems when you don't have people buying all on the same platform. Well, we can get into that later. Um, but you scale this conversation to two major software packages, and
Mm-hmm.
that's you can count on that as being $250 a month at
Mm-hmm.
least per person. And if it's a higher specificity of software with more technical needs, that number goes up. $250 a month per person adds up quick. $100, 100 people.
Absolutely.
It's not uncommon for us, even a small to mid-sized firm to have 100
Mm-hmm.
sales folks. 100 people, right there. $250 a month sounds small. Now it's $25,000 a month, right?
Absolutely. And I think that we people think that you can just turn those off too. Like that's a huge part of that
No.
conversation. Right. And so maybe speak to that piece of, oh, well, these are, we figured out this redundancy in finance. We'll just turn it off.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, you have a contract in that. You know that, right? And that contract does a couple of things. Number one, it says you're paying for licenses for 5 years, and then when you renew it, it renews on a time base. They don't want your money just once every year. They want you to commit the next time you need money. They want to use that to leverage a longer conversation, right? So you buy for more years, and so when you say I want to get rid of this, well, we got to pay for it for at least 3 more years to set a 5-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, the first question somebody ought to be asking is why in the world are we replacing something that we're under contract on this quickly?
Mm-hmm.
What did we miss? Because you
Mm-hmm.
missed something.
Obvious.
You didn't grow that fast, right? Or maybe you acquired another business and maybe that changes the math. But there are always edge cases. But you didn't outgrow your software that fast.
Mm-hmm.
You missed something, and now you're saying you're trying to talk about adding something that you don't need. Maybe the software package that you bought has that. There's also like there are a million questions in this. You have to go. I think at the end of the day, what is the sin that we all commit in this is we don't look at the requirements.
Mm-hmm.
We see something, we see it as a solution. There's no surprise that software companies call their products solutions. Uh, that's not on accident. And then you say, I need this solution to this problem, and you go buy it, and then you forget what other things it does or what you actually wanted to solve for in the first place.
Absolutely. And I think it's a big piece of really understanding who's supposed to own those tools, and who writes your requirements. I think that's another piece that can really go into here. But first, let's get to some of these great questions here. So thank you for tuning into this. We've got a lot of different people here on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Um, and one person who has a different opinion than you. So let's get to a
Here,
few of
let's,
these.
let's get start at the top.
Which one are we starting? Which one do you want to start with?
You go
Do
for
you
it.
care? Okay, great. Because sometimes you like to steal my thunder on that piece of it. So let's start with Ryan's here, and that is exactly the mindset. Quote: I'm glad someone knows how many AI apps we're using above my pay grade. Thanks for calling me out. like blatantly there, Ryan. I mean, I feel like word for
I got
word
another
was
one that's coming on
aggressive,
that, so don't worry about it.
but that would drive many IT admins crazy. My full goal in the organization is to drive people crazy. Shadow IT, because it's too slow otherwise. But all kidding aside, it's absolutely uh, a huge challenge, especially right now when we're trying to figure out who owns that oversight. Right? Is it it's the business's money, right? But is it IT's job? I don't know. Depends,
So
right?
well, in that scenario, so the problem that this creates is that you're going to end up asking IT to help with this, whether you think so or not, right? Yeah, at least you plan to use single sign-on for that new application you just bought. Yeah, you do. So you need IT for that, right? Otherwise, you're going to be logging into everything separately. So that at the end of the day, the chances that you're going to end up calling IT when you run into something are pretty high. And then they're going to say, "What is this?" It's going to take them time to get sped up, and your project that you thought was going to be done in 3 months is going to take 6 to 9 because you didn't involve the right people from the beginning in the first place. And then that's when you find out that you bought the wrong tool. So there's a lot that goes into this from a perspective of, well, let's just buy something else
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't have the time to think it all through, right? There's take the time to think it all through, and you will do a whole lot better in this because at the end of the day, um, it's important to know what you're going to need, and IT is going to have a hard time keeping up if you involve them in the middle of the conversation rather than at the beginning.
Absolutely. And I mean, they have the ability to see a lot of those functionalities that you don't, right? But once you have a tool in mind, it's hard to kind of
Yeah.
change that opinion.
Oh, and the
So
business doesn't like to be told that there's a different tool
I
before.
know that I
That's a
don't like to be told
that's a
that. I mean,
loaded conversation. That's hard to do.
obviously. Yeah. So let's do this one here. I have a very different and maybe a little unpopular opinion. Companies Companies with a budget should start building custom solutions. The cost will go lower and they will get exactly what they need. No holes. Aggressive, yes. Pragmatic, yes. Impossible, no.
I actually wholly agree with this. Now, there are times where you got to understand that building custom code creates its own challenges, right? There's a give and a take in this. Should you let's take ERP for example. Should you build your own ERP? Absolutely not. You want to know why? Because if you were good at building ERP, you wouldn't be selling whatever it is you're selling now. You'd be selling ERP, right? Because it makes a whole lot more money than most things, right? So the margins are way higher on ERP than most products out there. So that set aside, if we're talking about solutions here, I like the idea of building custom solutions where you can. Um, at some point, that does overgrow, right? And it does create challenges. But at the end of the day, this is not something that should be ignored, especially with the types of low code, no code applications that are out there. They can get you a couple of steps into the process, and the number of skill sets that are out there and more custom and more heavy development level skill sets that people think are being replaced by AI. They're certainly not. Um, AI can help with lots of different things. AI can write code for crying out loud. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that the expertise in developing hands, in a developer's hands, isn't valuable. So I don't disagree with this. And I think that AI can actually really support that position in that it can start helping with the conversation on how do we solve these problems more creatively, and what we've seen really effective, which is how do I use AI to identify all of my
Mhm,
obsolete code so I can decrement it and start cleaning it up. And there's a lot that can be done in that space, and I
mhm,
don't disagree with building custom solutions at all.
mhm. Yeah, and I think the key there is you build them, right? Like you're building them, not somebody else is building
Yes.
them. And that's where we get in kind of a tricky spot. Can you have people help you for sure, right? But you've got to
Yeah.
make sure that you're not outsourcing that, or you might as well just buy an outsourced software, right? So there's a fine line between understanding what that strategy looks like.
Well, yeah.
So we have that's a good take, but I think teams don't have time or budget to do that.
See,
Feel like
but they got the time and the budget to buy software, right? Like they got the time and the budget to get it wrong. This is challenging for me because what I like, and I'm a big process and governance person, right? So this is going to be loaded with that type of sentiment. But if I'm going to build a custom solution, what is the developer going to have to know to do that,
mhm,
right? There's going to have to be a conversation on what do you need, and you're going to be forced to define what you need on the business side of it. And that right there, being forced to define what you need on the business side of things is the solution to the vast majority of poor software fit problems.
mhm,
It's way more than 50%. It's
mhm,
probably more like 90. I would say that 90% of software problems come from somebody who didn't specify what they needed with enough rigor, intent, purpose, and detail to get it right. If you bought the wrong software because you missed something, you bought a new software because you're filling holes on the last software, and now you need both because you didn't realize the current software does something. You build the wrong quote unquote the wrong solution that doesn't do something because we missed a requirement. All of these things are all oriented towards the question of what do you need and why, and in that you go through the process of building something custom. Now all of a sudden you have to answer that question, and you had to, and a developer, not Claude. Claude doesn't do this part of it.
mhm,
Even though they'll write code, they won't ask the questions which are, um, why do you need that, and what else do you need? What about this thing that's connected to that? That level of thinking
mhm,
bigger, thing and seeing the pieces that connect, is something that only a developer who's sitting there and thinking through the process of how do I write code that solves that problem, and how do I find the problems in what they've asked for, the holes, the if this then that, if this then that. Um, oh, well, what about this? Right? What about this other scenario that's possible? And it's that space that I think the development side of it really adds a lot of rigor to it, especially when
mhm,
you have a scenario where that space can be filled with that's not a relevant solution, a relevant
mhm.
question for us. Okay, well, I can ask that question 100 times and get told that's not relevant to us, and I'm going to keep asking because I know I need to build all of the roads. Um, and one of those will be something like, aha, I didn't think of that. We got to anticipate those types of things. And that's where I think that custom solution conversation, it forces that rigor and structure that decentralized tool choices that we're talking about here are really problematic in.
I think that that is incredibly true, right? But governance is something that is so much easier said than done, right? Because
Yeah.
especially in these types of scenarios, it doesn't mean essentially centralizing every decision, but it means like being intentional about those decisions, right? Because we look at a lot of different levels of governance. Like, for example, should a $20 a month SaaS tool need an architecture review? I don't know, right? Like, that
Certainly
depends on,
needs an infosec review.
I don't know, what's the threshold, right? Like,
Access. Is
there you
somebody
go.
going to use it on a computer in my organization? Yes. Okay. So then, information security, cybersecurity team needs to know. Then that way,
But
you're not
then,
using something that is known.
right, but do they really care? Like for like the financial business piece of that. Like they screen, right, for security? Are they going to make that jump of like, we already have a tool that does this? Probably not, right? Because that's not their core function.
Yeah, that's true. But they also have a job to do and to protect the company from things getting uh, from all types of nefarious actors across the world, right? So there's a structure in this that's necessary. Now,
Hmm.
in some cases, not all organizations are so large that there's an information security, cybersecurity department.
Hmm.
That's a little bit antiquated in thinking at this point. Everybody has to think about it that one way or another,
Hmm.
depending on how big you are, whether or not that gets its own CISO role. But at the end of the day, if it's access, if you one of your employees uses a computer to access it on the internet, it needs to be thought of as, are we considering whether or not this is secure?
Hmm. I completely agree with you. Let's do this one. There seems to be a rise in quote unquote ops tools in more and more departments: DevOps, product ops, sales ops, marketing ops. Do we think that's on the rise because of the rise in solutions and implications of these solutions?
Um, that's an interesting question, and I don't know that I have a good answer for it. The ops types of roles. I think each one of those is easy to think of in a number of different types of ways, like DevOps. Um, DevOps is kind of the trendy way of acknowledging that IT not only has to build new software, but also has to maintain the existing environments, right? Who's resetting your password when you typed it in wrong too many times? Who is actually going to give you access to those new tools, or to the tools that we have when you hire somebody new and they need to use that tool, right? What about break fixes and all that stuff? Software that's not working the way that it ought to because something went wrong. All those things are regular IT jobs that need to get done, right? So, but the dev side of it is we also have to build new tools. Product ops, sales ops, marketing ops, I think are trying to convey that there is a support mechanism to those departments. I've seen them also listed as admin, sales admin, product admin. Those are all oriented towards the how do we support the folks who are doing sales itself, like actually not to diminish the role of sales admin or sales ops, right? But who are actually selling your product, right? They are creating quotes and sales orders. That is not sales ops. That's something different. But sales ops supports that function on the back end, right? So I think that some of it might be just a blending of that from this as I'm kind of talking myself through it.
Mhm.
Um, do we think that's on the rise because of the rise of solutions and implications? I would say certainly. Now that I'm thinking about it out loud, because at the end of the day, those teams there's a business side of ownership to applications today that doesn't live entirely in IT, and then that's part of the challenge in it. These sales ops types of roles,
Mhm.
customer ops, whatever you want to call it, are
Mhm.
using SaaS-based tools that they're buying and creating this scenario where I have my own tool. I built my own.
Mhm.
I use Claude to build my own tools. That's a fresh new one that's developed over the last couple of years, right? And it's really only think about this. It's really only been a couple of years that Claude started helping people write code. That's gonna get harder. It's just been literally 2, maybe 3 years that AI has been able to do that. So I think that relationship between business technical users and IT support is going to continue to grow, and I think these ops roles are probably an indication of that. Yeah.
I mean, I think the rise of these solutions, is kind of just those rise of focused solutions in specific areas, so that you can, have that SaaS sprawl or whatever you want to call it. These used to be pretty standard modules or anything like that in an enterprise software package, but now we have them sold as a la carte to kind of continue to embed in organizations. So to me, this goes right in the same conversation of needing to know your requirements and needing to know what you're actually need as an organization.
Yeah.
Let's go here. I love when we just run. Oh, not that one. Sorry. We'll get to that one. But we got one before it. Trying to be, just trying to be,
Yeah.
level. So customization can be nice to an extent, but then you run into issues. For example, SAP sunsets ECC, and your custom apps integrations aren't supported by S4 HANA, and now you're back to fitting to standard.
Standard. Yep. Well, this is it's a life cycle at that point, right? Customization is nice to an extent. There are lots of different ways, and this is a great example of
Mhm.
when you don't have control, right? So,
Exactly.
in a lot of scenarios, let's take let's stay on the SAP train here for a little bit and go back a
I want to
couple.
get off, just to be clear. So I
One of
don't
those.
want
We'll go back a couple of decades when ECC started becoming a thing, right? Everybody started building it out and supporting it and building all this custom code. That was the model, right? You bought an on-prem system and you customized the snot out of it to fit your particular solutions. Now that doesn't fit the software vendor model. They want to have less customization so that people can stay on software for longer. That's a good thing to a certain extent because you don't have to renew all the time. But part of the challenge in this is it's not just SAP moving to SAP. That those customizations in other scenarios that are more self-inflicted are we have so customized our current solution
to.
that we're behind. We're behind on all of our updates. This is like the folks that are on things like Microsoft Great Plains.
Don't talk about that. They get real mad
JD
when we do.
Edwards, they've been those things are so customized that they can't get out of them, right? And so
Mhm.
upgrading and keeping those tools up to date becomes a chasing your tail type of activity, and well, that's more the dynamic of customization becomes so extensive that it becomes unwieldy, right? And there are lots of organizations that simply say our software is so heavily customized that we cannot maintain it anymore, and so we're going to get a new one.
Mhm.
That's the general client initiated software life cycle as it pertains to I bought an ERP 20 years ago. I've outgrown it. It's over customized. I need to get into something modern. This example here, I think, is a good one in that doesn't mean that you have all the control over your customizations,
Yeah.
right? SAP is not going to support ECC6 anymore. They're simply
Mhm.
not going to. I would say that SAP wouldn't want you to think that there are possible solutions to that problem other than
Exactly.
upgrading to S4 HANA. I'm sure that there are other organizations that are going to be more than willing to help support your ECC6 environment. Will you have SAP behind that? No. They are sunsetting that side of it. But if you really need to keep your custom code and you don't want to go on to S4 HANA, I'm certain you can find somebody to help solve that problem for the right amount of money, right? Now, then it becomes a business decision. Are we moving
Mhm.
to S4 HANA because we feel like we're held hostage or
Mhm.
because we feel like that's the best option? Those are different questions.
Mhm.
Those are different answers to the same question that I think are important to convey in this piece of it. Um,
Yeah. And
uh,
just to add like one final thought to that consideration, like when we're on these tier 1 softwares like this and not having as much control on the applications we were able to run beside it, right? Like
yeah,
that's one of the biggest things we see with our SAP community is if you do want to, dabble in building those own things, we don't play well with others in those types of scenarios because they have the breadth to essentially support all those apps and don't want to give you the opportunity to do that. So again, there's plenty of options to do that, right? But we just got to
yeah.
figure out what's best for your specific environment, and those are so unique in that in that role. Did you have one that you wanted to answer?
Well, I do. I've got a couple I want to talk about here for a moment. I might rattle a couple of them off, but I think that on the SAP side of it too, there is a piece of this puzzle that is important that it is continuing to develop. There are ways of doing other things outside of it at SAP now because of this problem that Michael is illuminating. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there are lots of low code, no code solutions that will accept the SAP data and allow you to workflow outside of it and then put back in. So that now that'll be kind of a chicken and
Mm-hmm.
egg type of scenario where then that'll get locked out and then this will happen and then that'll get locked out. The same way, once upon a time, if you didn't integrate with Salesforce, you didn't sell ERP. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, that was like, and we integrate with Salesforce just like everybody else, right? But you know, we were told, and this is 10, 15 years ago at this point, Salesforce has been locked out because they're considered such a heavy competitor for so much. But if you didn't integrate with Salesforce, you didn't sell. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
bought your ERP until people found a way of saying, but we have our own CRM for that. So, anyway, I like this question. Does centralizing software solve anything if the business doesn't trust the team making those decisions? Um, this is a different type of problem, right? This doesn't have an issue with decentralized software. This is a problem with the relationship between IT and the business, and this is why IT is being left out of the conversation, and why the business is just going and buying new things, and that's a different type of challenge and a different type of approach because the relationship there is troubled, and somebody doesn't understand somebody else, and possibly that goes both ways. So that's an important piece of it. As we start thinking about, um, you know, building more tools or more proof of concepts, um, at some point you gotta execute, right? We're not here to tinker, and we're not here to just experiment, right? IT is not research and development. So there's a sense of this that the proof of concept seems to convey this thought process that we're going to do something that is to test whether or not it's realistic. And in a lot of cases, that's useful. But in most cases, that's how do I get in the door so that I can become entrenched from a software perspective. And that's a real big part of how software companies sell to businesses underneath the approval thresholds that would trigger a procurement and an IT review, right? So what happens there is if I just do a proof of concept, look, man, I could build you a proof of concept for 10 grand. Awesome. I had the approval authority for that. And now I've already signed something. And now what happens? They say, all right, how are we going to do logins? Oh, we should do single sign on. And now
Mm.
we're entrenched, right? That happens so fast. When what should have happened up front is we're going to officially do this as a proof. If we want to do a proof of concept, let's do a real one, not a shoestring budget. How do I buy something, anything, to see if it might
Yeah.
work a little bit? Let's look at
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing and see if it works. Then that way, if we're calling it a proof of concept, then let's treat it like one. Let's prove it. So I
Love
think
that.
that that's important. This comment here, what AI will do is create more and more software, and that will create more support and more ops roles. Yeah, it'll also push you in a spot where IT is continuing to fight from behind. On
Mm-hmm.
I broke something, right? I don't know exactly what I did, but it's broken. Okay, let's talk to, and then you find out well that it's because you're using this AI with this workflow, and it's hallucinating. It's putting in false data. No wonder it's broken. Oh, I didn't really think of that. Like, well, that's why you should call IT in the first place because IT should be considered um, your experts in
Mm-hmm.
technology, and the business should be considered experts in the business, and they should collaborate.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and that's all going to have to be included in that business case and that decision. What is the support cost? What is the ops cost, right? On
Mhm.
top of those subscription pieces or those building pieces, like depending on,
Mhm.
what road you're taking. But that it kind of is a new way of looking at that. And again, it kind of all goes back to that enterprise architecture type of level. So business, the capability isn't meeting our needs. IT, let's understand the enterprise impact of changing it. Decision, neither side decides alone.
I think that's a very rational way of putting it. What usually happens is this capability isn't meeting our needs, so we bought this thing, and now IT, we need your help. Uh, and IT says, "What?" Or the business goes to IT and says, "This capability isn't meeting our needs." IT says, "Let's understand the enterprise impact of changing it," and they say, "No, that's not going to work for us. That you didn't give us what we wanted, so we're going to go buy something else somewhere else and not tell you." Right? IT is seen as a roadblock in that, and sometimes it should be. Right?
That's the point.
Um, there's a sense of this that is. Our 7 year old has started shopping on Amazon. He hasn't found the buy now button yet, thank God. But I think of that as a very similar scenario, right? He's out there shopping, man. He's like, he knows he wants Legos. He knows he wants this and that. He's got this cart full of Legos. And one of them's the dinosaurs, right? And he wants these Lego dinosaurs. But they're not technically Legos. They just say something that sounds like Legos. So he bought them. And he wanted them. He had to have them. But they don't actually work with Legos. You can't stand them on an actual Lego piece. They're just the wrong size for it. And so he's disappointed because he bought the wrong thing. And now what does he want? He wants new Lego dinosaurs, right? So he wants the actual Lego dinosaurs now that will stand on it, not the junk ones he already bought because he didn't look at the requirements, right? He just bought it. And this is what's happening. The business is doing this. And then IT, not to say that IT is always the parents or always should be in the scenario, and
Mhm.
overinflates that thought process. But IT comes in and says, "You bought well, no wonder that doesn't work. I could have told you that from this description right here that was not going to work." And there's this proof of concept thing costs money, and buying things costs money. We should make sure that as we're buying things, we know we're doing it with diligence.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
We
Absolutely.
don't have Alexa. I don't
No,
believe
are you
it.
kidding? Have you
I
met
got I
Adam
got
here?
Google listening to me often
Yeah,
enough.
exactly. Have you met like prepper doomsday Adam over here? There's no way he has an Alexa because it would listen to his inner thoughts. So we
But
can't.
Google does that enough. I don't need
Okay.
to send those thoughts out on the internet.
Low code, no code has been mentioned a couple of times. The benefit there is that you're hopefully working within a platform that is secured and approved while businesses experiment and learn as quickly as they can implement. I think we said kind of the similar thread last week of like the business is meant to fail fast. IT
Yes.
is meant to be the lighthouse that never falls, right?
Okay. I kind of like that. That I'm sure I'll find a hole to poke in it at some
Oh,
point.
I'm positive. I mean, I'm positive about that. So 100%
Hmm.
correct.
So,
You guys.
I think what you have to remember is that um, a tool that doesn't work isn't going to get used, right?
Mhm.
But if we're out there and making decentralized software choices in a bubble and finding out that they don't work after we bought them, we have two problems. Number one is we just wasted a ton of money. Number two, how many of y'all out there have signed up for an app that rolls to pay and try to free trial, whatever, and then all of a sudden you totally forget that you were going to cancel it because it was stupid, and then it just charged you for a year. They charge you for
Mhm.
it. They don't mess around on that. They charge you a whole
Oh,
year,
yeah, absolutely.
and then what happens? Like, well, now I got it for a year. I might as well revisit using it. And a year from now, what happens? You've completely forgot about it. You haven't used
Mhm.
it a single time, and it's rolling to pay again.
Absolutely.
And
Always.
this happens at scale in businesses with software. It also happens with protein powder.
What?
We've got 9 different types of protein powder in our cabinet. Did you know that?
Oh, well, that's just because your beautiful wife is indecisive and thinks that we'll like the banana cinnamon flavor, and I hate the banana cinnamon flavor. But it
Well,
does
that
not
was supposed to be
happen.
a
We don't
requirement, though, right? But it
I
doesn't.
well, no, I didn't think it was a requirement. I thought that it was a personal preference. And I'm, the biggest one that's going to be like, hey, let's buy this, let's buy this, let's buy this, which is exactly why, I'm being roasted in the comments here for not knowing how many AI apps that we have, right? Because that's not my job. Okay. I'm the entertainment, I'm the personality hire. All right. So,
She's our
but I
spokesperson.
think I know, right. So I think the critical piece of like this all sounds fine, but what if your business and IT don't like each other? I mean, I feel confident in saying that 70% of businesses have some sort of humongous friction between the business and IT. And it's the main issue in becoming a digital mature organization, whatever that means. And I don't even know how you be well, I mean, we do this work all the time, so I do kind of know. But I think most people, most businesses don't even know how to start to fix that.
Well, the point is not what happens when they don't like each other. I don't need you to like each other. I don't need you to like each other at all. I need you to be respectful adults and work together,
Well, yeah, obviously.
right?
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
need you to like each other. But what happens too often is two organizations that don't like each other start to distrust each other because they think that they have these out to get you type of challenges. I'm 100% certain that the vast majority of you out there that think that somebody in your organization is out to get you because they did this or that or the other doesn't give a shit. They don't care. You think that they might, and you assign this level of they did this on purpose because of me. There's probably some other reason that they did that, right? This happens across all things, including in the relationship between business and IT, right? IT told me I can't have this because they want to be controlling of the conversation. Well, so there's 2 scenarios of that. Actually, maybe they don't. They just want to be involved, and you just pick something that literally does not integrate.
Mhm.
And they told you that, and you think that they're being standoffish because they simply told you that doesn't work. You can't put this on that. It doesn't happen that way. It's not technically feasible. Or there are scenarios where, yes, IT does want to be in control of certain things because there are certain things that are technically bad ideas. You cannot go broadcasting all of the company's secrets on AI. You simply can't do it. And IT has something to say for that. There's a security protocol for that. Working with one group right now, they're going to have a product that will crawl their SharePoint so that on SharePoint they can look at how many external links have we created and who still has access to them. Every time you click that button that says copy this link so I can share it with somebody outside the organization, how many of you have been doing that for 5, 6, 7, 10 years? Because it's saved space on the dropping an attachment, right? But that link still works to that external organization. That information you gave them, they still have access to, which in some cases isn't really as much the problem as they still have access to
Mhm.
our systems,
Mhm.
right? That's an opening. And so this company's going to go through and they're going to crawl all of those links and they're
Good.
going to shut some of them down. And people are super upset about this. You're revoking access. Yeah, I am. That's the point. People shouldn't have that access for 5 years. Let's be honest. If they haven't used it or if it's still relevant, then fine, renew the link,
Yeah.
right? But that access doesn't need to be everlasting,
Yeah. Absolutely.
especially for sensitive information. It should have an expiration date. So anyway, that's a hot button issue for me. I think so. Anyway, I like this topic. I like the conversation that we're having
Yeah.
here today. So I'm down with it. We'll get through the protein powder. I'm not too worried about that. Somebody will use it at some point.
Not me, because I don't like it. Just to be so clear with who the sen I like to set expectations just to be like so honest about that. Because I'm transparent. I'm an open book over here. Let's end with Jason's. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Businesses see functional fit and business value. IT watches enterprise impact, total cost, integration, data, security, reporting, controls, migration support, licensing, and long term ERP strategy. Challenges balance between localized ownership and enterprise value. Beautiful. Jason
I
just
think
ended it. Kudos.
that's a great thought. It's written by somebody who works in IT. I can tell just by the fact that the business does these two little things. IT does this long laundry list. I'm just poking fun at Jason, but it's not. This isn't false. This is a part of the paradigm, right? The
Mhm.
business needs to move as fast as the business possibly can, and that's not inaccurate. Um, IT, and there are pieces of governance that exist that are there to slow things down on purpose. Sometimes you should make sure that you're making a good decision. There are times where it should be the data points us 95% of the data points us in this direction. I'm going to take a leap of faith because this is business and I got to take a chance. There's always a risk involved in this. But I actually I wildly agree with this commentary, which is yeah, the business is supposed to see what it is they need to see. They're supposed to create value. They're not just supposed to see it; they're supposed to create it. And in the space of making sure that that value is created in an IT ecosystem and a technical ecosystem, IT gets involved in how do we help facilitate as a partner. And that word partner, I think, is an important piece of the relationship in this, where we're all here for the same purpose, for the thrivability of our business,
Mhm.
for the opportunities that we seek in the marketplace,
Mhm.
and that's a key component of how does IT get involved in enabling that safely, right? You're not going to wander down some dark alley in the middle of the night looking to buy something fun, right? That's just not something that people do, but businesses don't realize a lot of the time that that's what they are doing when they're on the internet. They're walking down some dark alley looking for something to buy. And then we got IT is kind of the right, but we need to make sure we do those types of things during the day
Mhm.
at reputable places so that we can remain safe as a business.
They're like, that reasonable, responsible friend that we all need in life, right?
That friend gets left out sometimes, though.
Oh,
So
all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much for all of this great commentary. This is awesome.
yeah,
Obviously, we'll have to continue this conversation because this seems like a pretty relevant topic to a lot of different people and a lot of different businesses. Um, So if you have follow-up questions to this, definitely DM us, whether it's on YouTube, LinkedIn, or wherever else. Because again, as I think we've really covered and unpacked here, it's very unique to the culture and the overall infrastructure of your business, right? So happy to answer any of those specific questions. This is a safe space, so we always remain anonymous in those types of different conversations. Also, if you subscribe to our channel here, you'll be able to be notified when we go live every Friday. If you have topic ideas that you want to hear, again, hit us up in the DMs or pop them on here after the fact, even after the fact, we go through and respond to all of these comments. So I want to thank everyone for your engagement. And thank you to you, Adam, for sharing your insight. It's great to have access to this information without having, to invest in one of those proof of concept type of pieces that are often gate kept. And that's the goal and mission of the confluential in our lives here, is to really promote the access and the ability to get good technology and unbiased advice. So we appreciate you supporting that. And we will see you next week, my friends. Have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone. Bye.